Happy Halloween, plant people. Literally, this is my favorite holiday. I'm gonna call it a holiday. Anyways, today's video, we're gonna be looking at how to save the pumpkin seeds from those bougie pumpkins that you get at the store. First, I want you to hit that like button and comment down below if you've heard of toxic squash syndrome. I went all out this year. I bought one, I think it was like 12 bucks, which is ridiculous. And then I got like the warty one and the really light pink and a white, you name it, because every single year I try to purchase the seeds for these pumpkins. They're sold out within minutes. So I thought, I'm just gonna buy the dang pumpkin and then I'll save the seeds from them. So we're gonna be going through start to finish how to do this. Now, what I will say is there's a spooky tale to doing this that we'll talk about a little bit later. So if you intend to eat these, Ella just landed on the camera. If you intend to eat these squash, I highly encourage you to watch this video to the very end. It could save your life. Seriously, not joking. So let's get into it. Inside of here, I have a ton of different pumpkin seeds that I've saved. Now, the first step of saving these pumpkin seeds is actually drying them off. So you're gonna notice you're gonna have the stringies on there and that sort of stuff. So the best way to do this is to simply lay them out on a piece of paper towel. And as you lay them out, you want to maybe give them a little bit of a scrub to kind of get off that excess slime. Now, the nice part about these seeds is that they do not, I repeat, do not need to be fermented or anything like that, because in your head, you're thinking, well, it has that slimy coating on the outside. Is that not the purpose, similar to what a tomato is? And the answer to that is no, because the actual seed is inside of this very thick seed coat, that woody part that you kind of chew on when you're cracking pumpkin seeds, or if you eat pumpkin seeds whole. I know there's people that do that. It sounds crazy, but it's a thing. And so when you chew on that, that's actually the seed coating. The seed itself is inside of that. So we don't need to ferment it. We don't have to do anything special. So that is method one to seed saving. The second method to this is very simple. It's called yeeting the pumpkin into the backyard. And this is obviously not seed saving in the sense that you could reuse these year after year unless you harvested the pumpkins and save seeds from them. But it works brilliantly because I've done it in the past. We've done it as a child. I've done this. My parents have done this for years. So that is something to keep in mind. There's no guarantee it's gonna work, but there's a high probability that it will. It works in my colder zone 3, but some years it doesn't pan out as well. So that would be your second method. Now keep in mind with these more exotic type pumpkins, the seeds are quite a bit different. So here's an example of a very large pumpkin seed. This is out of the big orange and green one. And then there's some that are very tiny. So this is out of those little tiny white pumpkins. It's very difficult to say like what variety these are or how many growing degree days these plants need. So because of that, it's one of those things where you'd probably want to consider actually saving the seeds and then starting them indoors, or putting them outside when the time is right. Some of these may have very long growing degree days, something like 120 days, which in my zone is a no-go. However, the benefit to this is that if I can get varieties of these to grow locally in my environment, the seeds I save from those plants next year will be better engineered to my microclimate, which means next year I'll get better and better pumpkins. So this first year is just going to be a trial run to see what works and what doesn't, because I don't know the varieties. So how long you choose to let these actually sit out and dry on a paper towel is going to be completely up to you. You can leave them sit for a week, 2 weeks. It's not going to hurt anything. When it comes to storage after, preferably store it in some sort of paper. You don't want to actually store it back in this jar because the humidity may be too high, which may cause them to either rot or sprout. We want to try to keep our seeds as dry as possible, so a paper envelope is always going to be the best. It can be a DIY envelope or something of that nature, don't get me wrong, but that is something that you want to consider. So we've talked about saving the seeds, how to dry them out, how that seed coating is actually seed coating. It's not the seed itself, so we don't need to ferment or anything like that. And then also how we have to take into consideration the potential that the growing degree days on these plants may be in excess of what your zone is. meaning you may or may not get a yield. You may just grow a giant pumpkin plant with nothing attached to it. So these are all things to keep in mind when you're choosing to experiment. Now, the literal Halloween tale of this is that these have the potential to cause toxic squash syndrome. So I'm going to put a big old disclaimer on here. If your pumpkins are seeds you're saving from someone else's environment and you don't know what was grown next to it or near it, you do not, if you save seeds from it, you do not want to consume the pumpkin. These are solely for decoration or for jack-o'-lantern type setups. Now, if you're thinking, like some of these I got from Home Depot, not a food place, so you have to keep that in mind too. It makes me wonder, like, are they maybe not meant for human consumption? Is that why they're sold at Home Depot? But then you'd think they'd have a sign up. Anyways, I digress. What I will say is that if you're a brave soul, and I'm a brave soul, you can actually taste test these to ensure they don't have toxic squash syndrome. Now, toxic squash syndrome is a syndrome that essentially can cause hair loss, massive stomach issues, and ultimately could kill you if you eat too much of it. Now, what I will say is you can take a bite or two and you'll be just fine. The way to test this is actually to take a small sliver and just put it on your tongue. You don't even have to actually chew it. And what you're tasting for is a bitterness, and it's going to be very obvious. This actually almost tastes like cantaloupe. It's a very sweet pumpkin. That's that big green and yellow one. That's delicious. Anyways, it tastes like cantaloupe. Don't ask me why. But this would be fun because it doesn't have that bitter taste. So you can taste test them if you're choosing to can them or do something of that nature. So with that being said, you don't want a toxic squash syndrome situation on Halloween night, so just keep that in mind. And that is something you have to keep in mind when you're saving your own squash seeds just in your own environment. But that chemical is just found in certain squash. And when that squash is cross or open pollinated with another squash that's very high in that chemical, we end up with the toxic squash syndrome of the offspring, not the actual plant itself. So if you live in the city and you know people near you are growing squash, this may be something you need to watch out for because it could happen that a bumblebee comes over and mixes up the pollen. But with that being said, I hope you guys have a safe and happy Halloween. I gotta get to decorating outdoors for all the little kiddies out there, even though kids don't trick-or-treat anymore, which is incredibly depressing. But I go all out. I go all out on Halloween. But if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments down below if you've ever heard of toxic squash syndrome. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.